Hello, welcome to Hothouze Podcast. My name is Aidan Lynch, and today I'm joined with two very special guests, Connor McDade and Niall Mullen. Today's topic on this podcast is going to be discussing our unpopular opinions of film and media. The first topic is general unpopular opinions. Do you two gentlemen have any of your own to share?
Yeah, I feel like I have a pretty unpopular opinion myself, and it doesn't really lie with any particular film, but more just the industry as a whole, where for the likes of film awards such as the Oscars and others, they're increasing their amount of required diversity and inclusivity in films. And while yes, that's ultimately not a horrible thing, I feel like it's something that can really severely limit the amount of stories being told and what kind of stories can actually be put forward towards such film festivals. And I think like something like that there can really have a negative impact on the film industry as a whole, and can really cover and shadow some really good stories that could be told.
That's very fair enough. That's fair enough, Connor. Do you have any of your own to share, Niall?
I think that horror movies are a little bit overdone these days, and particularly like movies of the 70s and 80s that used to utilise like more practical effects were far more innovative and kind of, I suppose, like because they were the first to do it, like slasher movies, like they were shocking and the first that you would sort of see those kind of movies, whereas nowadays like things like jump scares and CGI are kind of really overdone, and trailers really that kind of give away far too much of the plot, I think, of like before you even go to see the movie, and it kind of ruins the whole experience, like of just going and being surprised when you actually get there. So that's one of mine.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. You've got many films like the John Carpenter's The Thing, very big reliance on practical effects, and it still looks great today. Then you had The Thing remake in 2011, which doesn't look nearly as good and also wasn't nearly as good as the original. For me, a general unpopular opinion, because comedy is becoming much more prevalent in a lot of things, even more serious films nowadays, I feel like if a film has a very good, like, serious premise to it, a really good setup to its story, but then substitutes a lot of its substance for comedy in place of it. Like, take MCU films, for example, especially more modern ones, where they may have a serious scene and then somebody cuts in the middle of the scene with a joke. That's what I'm talking about here. Where the film may have a good premise to it, a good setup. You may be in the middle of a serious scene, but then a character just comes in with a joke, and it honestly completely ruins it, in my opinion. Not the comedy itself, mainly if the comedy is bad and is forced in such a way that it just feels completely off-putting. Like there's just a massive tonal shift there, so there is.
I do agree with both of these actually. I'm surprised to say the least, especially with you about the horror films. I'd say sort of agree and sort of don't at the same time. I do agree that in horror films there's a complete and utter lack of creativity, and I believe that the horror genre itself has become very stale. And like you said as well, especially with trailers, like I believe that they show everything in the beginning of the film. And with Aidan's point as well, I definitely do agree with that there, especially with the likes of Disney and MCU films and others. There is such a lack of a serious tone, like the point where if people see a serious tone in films such as them, it's very undermined because it's something that they're not used to seeing, and it's something they don't expect.
Yeah. Exactly. Moving on to the second topic. What films have you two seen that not very many others really like? They're not critically acclaimed. They haven't really won any awards. They're not very highly rated in terms of critic reviews. What films have you seen that not very many others like, but you do like personally?
Personally, I think like one film that I think is very, I don't know about the film awards or if it achieved any or not, but just through basically my own peer group and whatnot, The Irishman. came out in 2018 by Martin Scorsese, and a lot of people were saying it is a 3 hour long movie. Like, it's a long movie, don't get me wrong, but I think that it's a new sort of style that films are beginning to take, where they're sort of starting to slow down a lot more, try and show a lot more emotion with scenes, and it's not really fast paced at all. It's like The Irishman as a film. It's not like you're not experiencing a lot. Like, you're not being rushed through it at all. It's a slow story. It's something you can sit down, something you can actually try and digest and enjoy, and it's something where if the film, I think, is usually if it's too fast, you sometimes have to go for a rewatch. They just simply properly understand everything. With The Irishman, I don't think you need to do that, and I understand the CGE in the film is a bit overused, especially in the beginning, but ultimately I think the story that the film itself is trying to tell is parallel to them.
That's fair enough. I would kind of agree with you especially what you were talking about pacing, where a lot of films nowadays are very fast paced, because I do feel that myself, and I like it whenever a story actually slows down and gives itself time to breathe. I really like that. But moving on to you, Niall, do you have any of your own films that not many others have really liked, but you do personally like?
Dazed and Confused. Don't know if you've ever heard of that movie. It's a 90s movie about sort of like 70s high school kids in the last day of summer, and it's like kind of coming of age like movie. It's like Richard Linklater. He does a lot of movies like that. You might have seen Boyhood, any of those kind of movies he's made in recent years. He seems to try and like take a theme of like telling a story across maybe like a day, but like it does a really good job of like tying up the entire character's narrative like within the entire movie, and doesn't really feel rushed or too slow, and just sort of gets it just about right. But I have a favorite of like 70s music and stuff, so like a lot of the music in it's like kind of cool, and it's cool seeing a director who grew up in that time period kind of like telling a story of what it felt like to be like a high school kid, I suppose, back then in America. So it's one of mine.
Yeah. I think I've heard the name of that one before, but I don't really recognize it, but I've definitely heard the name before. For myself, these films are more well known nowadays, specifically because of Legendary Studios. For me, it would definitely have to be the MonsterVerse films. They don't tell any sort of deep or meaningful story. I just like seeing monsters beat the hell out of other monsters. That's basically it. That's basically it. They don't tell any meaningful story whatsoever. The characters in them are bad. I just like seeing monsters beat the hell out of other giant monsters. That's basically it.
Yeah, no, I do agree with like whenever I was saying as well about like there's films that can like really do lack a serious tone, like I said, but even then there's also the counter argument as well to say there's films that aren't meant to be serious and were never designed to be serious. What do you think about like sort of like what would be your opinion on the films that are not meant to be serious and sort of follow that there? Do you think that they're good in themselves, or?
That's a very interesting point. I do agree with you in the sense of that, like, the MonsterVerse films are not, they were not made to be serious. They started off with a semi-serious tone with Godzilla 2014. You had Bryan Cranston in there. His main character was killed off like a third through the film. I didn't really like Godzilla 2014, mainly because I felt it tried a bit too hard. But I think Legendary kind of realized that, and then we're all just like, okay, I think we know our target audience now. People who just want to see giant monsters fight each other. And that's basically what they did with all the other films. You got Kong Skull Island, which was just a mishmash. Actually, decent-ish story in that one. You had Godzilla King of the Monsters, and then you had Godzilla vs. Kong, which were just massive monster brawls. And now you have GXK, the new Empire, coming out in the next couple months. But I would definitely agree with your point that there are certain films that just weren't made to be serious, and the MonsterVerse falls under that category. Now, moving on to the final topic, which is kind of the exact opposite of what we were talking about there. What films have you guys seen that many others really like, but you don't?
Personally, I think like one film that I've really sort of had a large disagreement with compared to others is mainly the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole. I feel like it's just sort of taken such a downward spiral in the past, say maybe 5 to 10 years, and I personally think that it's really just now become a shell of what it once was whenever it was first created with the likes of the Iron Man, Hulk, the original Hulk, and Thor, like beginning of them films and whatnot. And I just think that they're just really trying to, it's beating on a dead horse kind of thing to try and pull money wherever they can. I do believe that they do come out with some good things. Like for example, I still think that the Daredevil series is still one of my all-time favorites, but at the same time, it's a diamond in the rough compared to the rest of the stuff that they come out with.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there, and we'll get on to my point soon. But Niall, do you have any opinion on any films that you've seen that many others really like they may be critically acclaimed, called masterpieces by those at the top of the industry, but you just couldn't really side with them?
Avatar, I suppose the first one and probably the second one. I think that like in terms of CGI, it was massively innovative, but the story to me, I've watched it like 2 or 3 times, and I just still don't get it. Like how everybody's hypes it up to be this massively, great movie. Like the CGI, that's all I'll give it, I suppose, in terms of innovation. But like, there's movies that came before that that were doing like CGI like in a really innovative way, like the Lord of the Rings movies. Stuff they got there even like were starting to like really get into it. But that was the first movie to really properly like use it like to its full capacity, and there's not really been anything since apart from the sequel probably. It is a good movie, but it's not as good as it's hyped to be, I think.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you there, completely. I saw the first and second film. Don't remember anything about them. They were quite bland and forgettable to me. The only thing that I remember about them is just how beautiful they made the world look. I think it's one of the few films where Avatar 2 specifically, where it has done CGI in a certain way where there's certain scenes where it genuinely looks real. I would definitely agree with you there. But anyway, getting on to my point, and this is sort of harking back to Connor's point earlier, where he was talking about how the MCU kind of just fell flat for him. This is probably going to make a lot of people unhappy, but for me, it has to be the entire Tom Holland Spider-Man series. I haven't liked a single one of those films at all, and specifically No Way Home. If I was to actually pinpoint where the MCU died for me, it was that film, because that film did something that really, really, I think, spelled doom for the MCU. It brought about the multiverse. And since the multiverse has been brought about into the MCU, it's crashed and burned. And it was this film that started that. It brought it in, continued it on, and it's just died for me since then, so it has.
I agree and disagree again, where it sort of follows the idea that I do think that No Way Home, the final movie you're talking about, it has good points, but there's some major plot holes in it. And I do agree with you in that it does sort of just show the downward spiral of the MCU.
Yeah. So anyway, that about covers it for our unpopular film opinions. I really hope you enjoyed watching this. Had a great time talking. Hope to chat to you all again soon.